How you going, guys? Hope you're all doing very well. I'm back for another movie review. The film I'm going to be reviewing for you tonight was a film that initially I thought it was from the United States. They got American actors, American accents, and I always thought it was filmed in the United States. But when I realised I was totally wrong, I was quite surprised. It's actually a UK production, and it was filmed in Canada. So, 2005 release, English language, directed by Terry Gilliam. This film is called Tideland. And the story to Tideland is as follows. Jaleesa Rose, a young girl, is forced to live in a terrifying and gruesome world. After her mother dies, her father takes her away to a desolate farmhouse. In order to escape the harsh reality of her childhood, she drifts into a bizarre fantasy world where only her doll heads keep her company. The line between her imagination and reality quickly disappears when she meets a mentally damaged man and a mysterious ghost-like woman who share in her adventures. Tideland is a spine-chilling tale from the visionary mind of acclaimed director Terry Gilliam. So the movie centres on Jaleesa Rose. She is a very young girl who lives a very harsh reality, and she escapes that reality by going into her imagination. So she's a very lonely girl. Her father is a rock star, so they're always on the road, and so she's very lonely. And her only friends are doll heads on the end of her fingers that she's named, and she talks to them. So she's a very odd girl, but considering her situation, you can understand that. Now, both of her parents are chronic heroin users, and she is exposed to this harsh reality, and she doesn't think anything different of it. It was actually quite disturbing to see what she actually has to do, and she actually prepares the syringes for them. So, a really shocking moment in the film. But yeah, one day the mother ends up overdosing on heroin and dying. And so the father is, he's flipping out, freaking out totally, and he sees that, he's going to be blamed for her death. So he takes Jaleesa Rose and they're on the run. They catch a bus to Jaleesa Rose's grandmother's desolate farmhouse located in a very rural area. So they stay here, it's crumbling, this farmhouse, there's wild animals living in it, so under no circumstances should anyone be living here, let alone an 8-year-old girl, but they've got no other choice. Before long, the father ends up overdosing and once again dying. So this leaves Jaleesa Rose all on her own, and she's forced to go completely into her imagination in order to try and forget her reality. So she's gone from a harsh reality to a truly bizarre world in her imagination that features some very awkward interactions between adults and minors and a very bizarre sort of outcome. So if you want to know more, please go out there and check this film out for yourself. Hopefully I've done a good enough job with that rundown. It's a very complicated film. Definitely a movie that you have to really see for yourself to get the full understanding. But yeah, that's as best as I can do, so hopefully that was good enough. So yeah, that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, what I thought of this very unique film. When you think of Terry Gilliam, you know that you're going to get something very surreal, you know it's going to have an underlying message, and you know it's going to be memorable. Films like 12 Monkeys, all those kinds of stuff, it's a very morbid world that Terry Gilliam has, and it has a very big splash of fantasy, and it kind of takes you to another dimension. So that is his trademark, and that's a trademark that is very apparent in this film. But this movie is much harder than anything he's ever done. So this movie will separate itself from the bunch of Terry Gilliam, and it shows the versatility that Gilliam actually has. Now, what I got from this film is that Terry Gilliam was willing to take a risk. He was willing to make something that was shocking, very confronting, thought-provoking, and just a really bizarre nightmare. And it's harder, much harder than your typical sort of a Terry Gilliam. It felt like Terry Gilliam in this film was unrestrained. He wasn't kind of watering it down for the masses. He was going to make a film that was going to test the limits, and it was very, very ambitious, and for the most part, I thought he pulled it off very well. It is a movie about innocence and the power of a child's imagination in contrast to the harsh realities. Another movie that is very reminiscent of this film is Pan's Labyrinth. Although it's a different kind of story, it does involve a child's imagination and how they can escape into it to avoid the harsh realities. But in this movie, Jaleesa Rose's imagination kind of symbolizes what she's gone through in reality, which makes it really, really, really disturbing. Now, with children, art imitates life. So, when you're young, you're watching, a cowboy movie, they're shooting Indians. So you go out the backyard, you're pretending you're a cowboy and you're shooting Indians yourself. So your imagination is from what you know. And so in this movie, you see some truly despicable things. I mean, there are some interactions that border on sexual, that involve a minor and a man. So that kind of gives you the impression that somewhere in Jaleesa's life, in reality, she'd been abused. That is not so much an obvious sort of point, and it's not really a point that anyone else has come up with, but I felt that was very apparent, and that was the most disturbing part of the movie. What you don't know about Jaleesa Rose is what is truly heartbreaking, because what she is experiencing in this fantasy is truly, inappropriate, and not what a normal girl of this age would be thinking of. So it kind of gave me the impression that, her imagination is from what she knows. So from what she's imagining, she must have experienced it sometime in her reality. So I'm not going to give it away what happens, but when you see it, it gave me that impression, which, it was very heartbreaking, very disturbing, and it just showed you how damaged this little girl was. Now, it's a very bright colouring film. As I said, different dimension, typical Terry Gilliam, but it's a very, very dirty movie. At the end of it, you will be wanting a shower, and to even some point, the movie is so bright, so dry, that you're even getting dehydrated just watching the film. It kind of feels like you're getting a headache just because of the harsh conditions that the film is taking place in. So it's definitely one of those movies where the actual cinematography helps portray the environment through the screen, and you really experience it along with the characters. So nothing about the movie is clean. Very dirty topics. There is very graphic drug use. There's very just sexual content involving a minor, so just, bordering on pedophilia. You think, there are some scenes where they're about to kiss each other in a very inappropriate manner, which just really made me cringe. Fortunately, they don't go through with it, but I do applaud the fact that Terry Gilliam was willing to take such taboo subjects and make them, in what was a very memorable film. Now, the acting was the best part of the movie. Jeff Bridges played the father. He played a great role, but unfortunately he wasn't in it for very long. I also liked Jennifer Tilly, who was the mother, but once again she was in it for even a shorter period than Jeff Bridges was. But the person who stole the show was Jadelle Ferland, who played Jaleesa Rose. I've never seen such a young actress play such a powerful role in my life. At no stage does she really realize the full extent of what she's going through. She never breaks down in tears. She's always very happy. So that it's a very unique role that she had. It would have been easy for Terry Gilliam to portray a character that was always crying, that was always feeling sorry for herself. But it was very unique to see such a young girl being lost in her innocence, being oblivious to the outside world, because what she knew in reality was, she didn't know any better. So it kind of gave you the impression that ignorance was a big part in it as well. So that was really hard to take at the same time, but it was also uplifting to see that this girl was happy, even though she was living a dog's life. And that's what the whole film about. It's such a mix of emotions that at the end of it, you realize that you've really experienced cinema rather than just watching a movie, you've lived the movie. So, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. My only criticism of this movie was the fact that it kind of dragged in places, and the pacing could have been a little bit better, and it could have been cut down by about 10 or 15 minutes. But, yeah, it is a horror film. I'm going to say it's a horror film because some of the imagination is just so bizarre, and it's just really creepy, and therefore I do think that there is enough value in this film to warrant it as a horror movie, but it's not your standard horror movie, so if you haven't got a high attention span, don't worry about watching it because it's a very slow burner. But I really enjoyed this. I think it's Terry Gilliam's most ambitious project. I'm not prepared to say it's his best film, but it's right up there with it. It's something different, and it's something very shocking. So be very careful going into it because it will offend a lot of people. But if you're willing to challenge yourself, then yeah, this movie is definitely one to remember. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. It's not perfect. As I said, the pacing kind of ruins it a little tiny bit. Well, I'm not going to say ruins it, but it kind of prevents it from being a perfect film. But yeah, it really is memorable, and if you're a fan of Terry Gilliam, this one is compulsory viewing. So that's 4.5 out of, sorry, I've just completely lost my train of thought there. That's 4.5 stars for Tideland. It is coming highly recommended. Alright guys, that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.